End is near. Biggest tragedy just happened in the Jerusalem. The whole world is shocked and scared.
From a wild storm that ripped through Johnson County, Indiana, and the strongest tornado.
That's when viewers suggested it might be a phenomenon known as Fata Morgana. But
It did not begin in the sky. It began beneath Jerusalem, where stone that has endured centuries started to fail without warning. Then, the air responded violent, precise, unnatural forming where no storm should exist. Fire followed, appearing inside the holiest walls, burning without harm, then changing its nature as if a boundary had been crossed. Silence settled where noise should have returned. And now, above it all, the sky itself shows signs of structure and movement that refuse to disperse. These are not separate events. They are stages. When the ground moves, the air answers, fire manifests, and the sky changes. History is no longer unfolding, it is converging. Leave a comment, subscribe, and stay alert, because what's happening now is not meant to be ignored. What makes the recent ground failures in Jerusalem so alarming is not simply that they are happening, but how they are happening. Sudden ground subsidence has been reported across multiple parts of the city, often without any visible trigger. Roads dip unexpectedly, walkways fracture, and sections of ground sink inward as if the surface has lost confidence in what lies beneath it. These are not slow deformations measured over years. They are abrupt, localized failures that catch residents and engineers off guard. Sinkholes and partial collapses have formed without seismic warnings. Instruments designed to detect tremors, shifts, or stress along known fault lines show nothing proportionate to the damage observed. There is no earthquake sequence to point to, no aftershocks to map, no regional event that explains why the ground gives way in one place while remaining intact just meters away. The absence of seismic context is precisely what makes the situation unsettling. As Scripture warns, the earth reels like a drunkard when its foundations are disturbed. Isaiah 24-20. The city is reacting without the usual cause. Even more troubling is where this instability is occurring. Several incidents have appeared near Jerusalem's most historically dense stone layers, areas reinforced by centuries of construction, repair, and continuous load-bearing use. These foundations have survived wars, sieges, and major earthquakes in the past. They were assumed to be among the most stable parts of the city. Yet cracks are now appearing in zones long considered geologically secure, undermining assumptions that time-tested stone guarantees safety. The Psalms once declared, "The foundations of the earth are shaken when order itself is questioned." Psalm 82-5. Geological surveys suggest that the ground is not failing from above, as would be expected with surface erosion or structural overload. Instead, the behavior points to pressure being released from beneath. Inward collapses, downward, sagging, and sudden voids imply that something below the surface has shifted, emptied, or destabilized. This is not consistent with typical urban sinkholes caused by leaking pipes or gradual water erosion. The pattern suggests a deeper and less predictable process. The psychological impact on the city has been immediate. When the ground beneath an ancient city begins to give way without warning, it affects more than infrastructure. It erodes confidence. Jerusalem has long been perceived as a place that absorbs pressure rather than releases it. Now, that pressure appears to be escaping upward, forcing a question that cannot be ignored. Jesus himself warned that when foundations fail, it reveals what was truly built on rock and what was not. Matthew 7:26-27. If the foundations themselves are shifting, what else assumed to be stable is already under strain. As the ground beneath Jerusalem shows signs of inward collapse, the disturbance does not remain confined below the surface. It rises. The air above the city begins to behave in ways that feel less like weather and more like response. Reports describe the sudden formation of violent, tightly wound, tornado-like vortices, appearing with little to no warning, often in conditions that should not support such events. These formations do not arrive with advancing storm fronts or long-building pressure systems. There are no dark cloud banks rolling in, no dramatic drops in temperature, and no classic collision of warm and cold air masses. In several cases, skies were reported as relatively calm just moments before the vortices appeared. This absence of traditional meteorological setup is what immediately set these events apart. Witnesses consistently describe winds behaving with sharp. Unlike ordinary desert winds that spread dust and force across wide areas, these vortices appear compact and defined. Inside the column, wind intensity is extreme. Just outside it, conditions can remain strangely calm. The air does not disperse chaotically. It concentrates. This precision unsettles observers because it contradicts how turbulent wind is expected to behave in open terrain. Equally disturbing is the speed of formation and disappearance. Rapid vertical columns have been seen forming, intensifying, and dissolving within minutes. There is no gradual buildup and no slow dissipation. The phenomenon feels abrupt, as if switched on and off. This makes preparation impossible and amplifies the sense that the events are not random atmospheric accidents. Damage patterns reinforce that impression. Instead of broad swaths of destruction, impact zones are narrow and selective. Objects are lifted, twisted, or displaced along tight corridors, while nearby structures remain untouched. This inconsistency does not align with ordinary desert wind behavior or known regional weather phenomena. Each incident looks less like a storm and more like a localized force passing through. Given Jerusalem's history and symbolic weight, biblical comparisons have surfaced almost immediately. Ancient texts often describe violent winds appearing suddenly at moments of transition, warning, or judgment. Whether interpreted literally or symbolically, the parallels are difficult to ignore when such phenomena occur in this location and at this moment. The pattern is becoming harder to dismiss. First, the ground shifted. Now the air has turned hostile. The disturbance is moving upward, layer by layer, and it shows no sign of stopping here. Stay with what follows, because the next sign does not come from the air, but from a place far more sacred and far more unsettling. Inside Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where ritual has followed. Ritual for centuries and expectation is carefully managed by tradition. The appearance of fire broke every familiar rule without announcing itself as a spectacle. Candles ignited spontaneously, not in a rush or chain reaction, but individually and quietly, as if each flame had arrived on its own terms. There was no visible ignition source, no lighter, spark, or friction. Only the sudden presence of fire where there had been none. The timing unsettled observers. The ignitions occurred during moments of prayer and collective gathering, when attention was turned inward and movement was minimal. Nothing in the environment suggested an accident or human interference. The stillness of the space made the flames feel more intrusive, not less. Fire is expected to draw attention by danger. Here, it demanded attention by restraint. In the first minutes, the fire behaved in ways that contradicted instinct. Flames failed to burn skin, hair, fabric, or beards. Worshippers passed their hands through the fire without recoiling. Cloth brushed against open flame without catching. Hair remained intact. The fire looked real, moved like fire, and produced light and heat, yet it withheld injury. This contradiction produced a deeper unease than immediate danger would have. A harmless flame removes the familiar logic of fear. Witnesses did not respond uniformly. Some stepped closer, compelled by disbelief. Others withdrew, unsettled by the loss of control that accompanies unpredictability. The absence of pain did not reassure everyone. For many, it intensified the sense that the fire was not malfunctioning, but behaving deliberately. Then, without warning, the behavior changed. The same flames that had refused to burn began to act as ordinary fire. Fabric scorched, hair singed, skin reacted. The transition was abrupt and unannounced, leaving no clear boundary between the two states. This shift erased the possibility of interpreting the earlier phase as illusion or trick. Fire had not merely appeared. It had chosen when to behave differently. The emotional impact lingered longer than the flames themselves. Reactions ranged from awe to fear, from reverence to dread. Some felt affirmed, others deeply unsettled. What united these responses was the recognition that the event resisted control. No explanation could be applied quickly enough to contain it. As footage and testimony spread, ancient descriptions of holy fire resurfaced in public awareness. Accounts of flame that illuminates without consuming, of fire associated with presence rather than destruction. These texts no longer felt symbolic or distant. They felt observational. In a place where fire has long symbolized judgment, purification, and divine proximity, its refusal to burn became the most unsettling detail of all. As the flames subsided and normal sound should have returned, witnesses instead reported an overwhelming stillness settling over the space. A stillness so complete it felt imposed rather than natural. In areas moments earlier filled with murmured prayers, footsteps, and whispered reactions, sound thinned out abruptly, as if the air itself had absorbed it. Crowded spaces did not empty, yet they fell silent in a way that defied social instinct. This silence was not described as peaceful in a simple sense. Many spoke of a tension layered beneath it, a quiet that pressed inward rather than relaxed outward. People reported the unsettling sensation of being observed, not watched by another human presence, but known as though attention had shifted direction. Instead of eyes scanning the room, individuals became acutely aware of themselves, their thoughts, and their inner state. Witnesses described a blend of calm and fear existing simultaneously, an unusual pairing that resisted easy interpretation. There was no rush to flee, yet no urge to celebrate. Some felt compelled to lower their heads, others stood frozen, and a few wept without being able to explain why. The experience did not provoke hysteria, it provoked gravity. Multiple reports now describe clear angelic visitations, marked not by imagination or symbolism, but by consistent visual and sensory details repeated across independent witnesses. The angels were described as humanoid in form, yet unmistakably not human. Their bodies appeared solid, though not bound by physical weight. Many reported garments resembling flowing robes, light in color, without visible seams or material texture, as if the fabric itself did not belong to the physical world. The faces were difficult to fix in memory not because they were hidden, but because looking directly at them produced an instinctive urge to look away. Witnesses consistently reported eyes that felt penetrating rather than observable. Several accounts mention wings, not always extended, but folded closely behind the figures, visible only when attention was drawn to movement. These wings were not feathered in a natural sense. They appeared layered, structured, and radiant, reflecting light without producing glare. No sound accompanied their movement. The angels did not walk, nor did they float in a way recognizable as flight. They appeared, occupied space, and then were simply there. The visitations were brief. The angels did not fade or dissolve. They departed as they arrived suddenly and completely. One moment, they occupied the space. The next, they were gone. Sound returned. Movement resumed. But the atmosphere did not immediately recover. Many witnesses reported lingering effects: trembling, tears, difficulty speaking, or an overwhelming sense that something irreversible had just occurred. Across testimonies, one conclusion remains consistent. These angels did not appear to persuade or instruct. They appeared to mark a moment. In biblical patterns, angels arrive when decisions have already been made and events have already been set in motion. Their presence is not the beginning, but the confirmation. If this unsettles you, don't dismiss it. Leave a comment, subscribe, and stay with us, because moments like this are meant to be noticed, not ignored. Near the cliffs of Qumran, where isolation once served discipline and silence carried purpose, the discovery of a sealed copper tube challenged expectations in a way few artifacts ever have. The object itself was unmistakably intentional. Copper is not a casual choice. It resists decay, protects contents, and signals long-term preservation. The tube was carefully crafted, deliberately sealed, and remarkably intact, suggesting it was meant to endure and to be opened at the right time. In a region famous for preserved texts and sacred writings, the assumption was immediate and almost automatic. This container would hold words, a scroll, a warning, a record. Copper implies value, and value implies content. Yet when the seal was broken, the interior revealed nothing. No scrolls, no inscriptions, no fragments, no residue. The tube had not been emptied. It had never been filled. The condition of the object made this conclusion unavoidable. There were no signs of damage, decay, or looting. The interior showed no abrasion, discoloration, or organic traces that might suggest something had once been present and then removed or decomposed. The emptiness was original, deliberate, final. This realization shifted the weight of the discovery from archaeology to interpretation. The shock did not come from what was missing, but from what was refused. In a discipline trained to extract meaning from material evidence, emptiness becomes deeply uncomfortable. Artifacts usually answer questions. This one asked them. Silence, in this case, was not a mystery waiting to be solved. It was a confrontation imposed on the observer. Without text to interpret, meaning could not be outsourced to scholarship or tradition. The mind was forced to supply its own framework. Was the absence symbolic? Was it judgment? Was it expectation? The tube offered no guidance, no authority, no reassurance. It removed the safety of instruction and left responsibility with the one who opened it. This is what distinguishes the Qumran tube from other enigmatic finds. It does not invite speculation for curiosity's sake. It denies explanation altogether. The silence does not ask to be decoded. It demands to be faced. In doing so, it positions humanity not as a recipient of warning, but as the subject of it. In ancient traditions, silence often appears at moments when instruction would interfere with recognition. Words guide behavior. Silence exposes posture. The empty copper tube preserved nothing, but it revealed everything about the one seeking answers. The message was not lost. It was never given. Above Jerusalem, witnesses reported a formation in the sky that resisted familiar categories from the moment it appeared. Rather than a diffuse cloud mass or a transient atmospheric effect, the structure presented itself with a city-like geometry, elevated, layered, and unusually defined. Observers described stacked contours and tiered depth, as though the formation possessed volume instead of flatness, giving the impression of architecture rather than weather. What drew immediate attention were the edges. Unlike clouds that blur, feather, and dissolve at their boundaries, this formation appeared sharply outlined. Its contours remained coherent against the surrounding sky, refusing the soft gradients typical of vapor or fog. Minutes passed without visible deformation. The sky around it shifted subtly, yet the structure held its shape, maintaining clarity longer than atmospheric effects are known to allow. Equally unsettling was the absence of dispersal. The formation did not thin out, stretch, or break apart under prevailing winds. It neither rose nor sank, neither expanded nor contracted in a way consistent with cloud systems. Instead, it appeared suspended present without motion, occupying space rather than passing through it. This sense of suspension distinguished the event from optical illusions, which usually shift with angle and light. As footage and eyewitness accounts spread, comparisons surfaced almost immediately. Biblical imagery of heavenly cities, structures not built by human hands, appearing above rather than beyond, entered public discourse. These parallels were not introduced cautiously. They emerged instinctively, driven by the formation's resemblance to descriptions long embedded in religious consciousness. The reaction was intensified by location. The phenomenon centered over Jerusalem itself, not the surrounding regions, not the horizon, and not a broad swath of sky. The city beneath it seemed deliberately marked. Meteorological explanations followed, but none proved sufficient. Rare cloud stratification, atmospheric layering, and optical refraction were suggested. Yet each failed to account for all observed characteristics simultaneously. Clouds do not maintain sharp edges while remaining stationary. Fog does not form layered geometry. Optical effects do not present consistent structure from multiple vantage points across a city. No confirmed explanation reconciled duration, definition, and localization. What unsettled observers most was not fear of danger, but the implication of intent. The structure did not announce itself with sound or light. It did not threaten or impress. It simply appeared and remained, long enough to be seen, recorded, and questioned. In a sequence already marked by shifting ground, violent air, unburning fire, and deliberate silence, the sky above Jerusalem no longer felt empty. It felt occupied quietly, deliberately, and without explanation. What defines this moment is not any single phenomenon, but the way multiple signs now converge with unsettling consistency. Ground instability, violent air formations, fire that refuses to burn, silence that carries weight, and light that behaves with intent have all appeared within a narrow span of time and space. Each event alone could be debated, delayed, or dismissed. Together, they form a pattern that resists isolation. No single explanation accounts for all of them. Yet they align in location, sequence, and escalation. Jerusalem is no longer merely the setting. It functions as both stage and mirror. Events unfold there, but they also reflect something back to those watching, exposing assumptions, testing attention, and revealing how easily significance is ignored when it does not arrive with spectacle. Jerusalem has always concentrated meaning. When signs gather there, they rarely remain symbolic for long. What is most striking across this sequence is the absence of instruction. There has been no voice explaining what to do, no command clarifying how to respond, no declaration offering reassurance or threat. In previous eras, warnings arrived loudly, often accompanied by unmistakable direction. Here, silence itself has taken that role. The lack of instruction becomes the warning. It removes excuses. It forces responsibility inward. This shifts humanity's posture. The events do not push toward panic or immediate action. They push toward reflection. There is no explosion demanding fear, no catastrophe demanding escape. Instead, there is pressure, quiet, precise, and sustained. The danger does not lie in fear, which fades quickly, but in dismissal, which hardens slowly and permanently. These signs do not escalate by becoming louder or more destructive. They escalate through precision. Each one targets a different layer: ground, air, fire, awareness, sky, without overlapping unnecessarily. This precision narrows interpretation. It becomes increasingly difficult to argue coincidence when alignment replaces randomness. As a result, the central question has changed. It is no longer, "Is this real?" That question assumes distance. The more urgent question is, "Are we paying attention?" Attention is costly. It requires humility, patience, and the willingness to remain alert without immediate answers. What emerges is not a picture of sudden destruction, but of exposure. Foundations are tested, assumptions surface, inner orientations are revealed. This kind of ending is quieter than catastrophe, but far more demanding because it does not allow spectatorship. It requires presence. If you're still following this, don't let it pass unnoticed. Leave a comment, subscribe, and thank you for staying alert, because moments like this are rarely understood in real time, only recognized by those who chose to watch, discern, and prepare.